Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another daily data check-in. So far, we have been covering off on companies who are collecting data, not necessarily in the most ethical manner, and using data without actually informing the majority of consumers. And so we've covered off on that. So today, we actually have somebody who's joined us. We have Dan, VP of Marketing from Swoop. And he's going to be talking about better ways that we can keep people informed about the kinds of data that we're collecting, how we can actually make sure that we are addressing privacy correctly within a company, and in particular within a healthcare company, and the benefits that come from using completely anonymized data. So Dan, welcome. So happy to have you join. Of
Thank you, TJ. It's a pleasure to be here.
course. So tell us a little bit about Swoop. Tell us what you do. Tell us about this company.
Sure. So Swoop is basically we've got our main company and then our subsidiary IPM.AI. And what Swoop does is we provide lookalike demographic-based audiences for programmatic advertising, specifically designed to help biotech and pharmaceutical companies, basically any healthcare company, reach out to on a B2C basis their ideal population. And then the backbone of a lot of what we do is IPM.AI, our data subsidiary. And so IPM.AI is a commercial analytics provider for the biotech pharmaceutical industry. And effectively what the company does is we utilize de-identified health data, so mostly claims data that we tap, and then we utilize AI and machine learning algorithms to help pharmaceutical, biotech, et cetera, organizations understand, model, and figure out how to message and to activate and to learn about their ideal patients. So effectively,
Tell me a little bit, just in hearing you talk about this, this kind of like, like anonymized data. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you guys are making sure the data is anonymized and how you're addressing privacy?
so the data comes to us anonymized. We receive the data with zero identifying information. Once it comes to us, it's already scrubbed of anything that would be considered to be personally identifiable information. And then we've built a patented AI machine learning platform that we like to call privacy by design that allows us to utilize that de-identified data in a really deep, privacy safe, fast manner in order to help produce better health outcomes without having to deal with more archaic methods of protecting privacy. So it's effectively what it is we are able to manipulate and to analyze this de-identified health data in such a way that has been shown to be privacy safe. It's been certified by HIPAA specialists, HIPAA certification specialists, and the patent means that basically we're the first and only company capable of doing what we're doing in quite this way. And it allows us to, we will never know who we're analyzing, whose data we're analyzing, but we can build models of, demographically and from the perspective of like a medical claims history, what that kind of person looks like. So a big part of our focus is on rare diseases. If you look at NORD, which is the National Organization of Rare Diseases, they've got some great statistics on, there are 7,000 estimated rare diseases and less than 500 FDA-approved treatments. But the FDA, if you look at what they've been approving of late, of a huge chunk of new treatments that are getting FDA approval are specifically for rare diseases. There's 200,000 or fewer people who are estimated to be suffering from rare disease, which is what makes it rare. And so the problem that you run into is without utilizing big data, without utilizing AI and machine learning, how can you expect somebody who has one of these 7,000 rare diseases, or even one of the people who happen to have a rare disease that has an FDA approved treatment, to actually be connected to that treatment, because it's very hard to expect, almost impossible to expect a physician to know all of these diseases and to know all of the treatments that are available, because a lot of times, you're going from physician to physician to physician, and the physicians are specialists. So you go to a cardiologist and they say, okay, well, I don't really necessarily know what is causing these symptoms, but as an expert in the heart, your symptoms could correlate with this more traditional condition, so we're going to treat you for that. And then after a year or so, treatment isn't really doing anything, so you get referred to, say, a hepatologist. And the hepatologist says, well, I'm not entirely sure what this is, but it correlates with, your symptoms could correlate with this particular liver condition, and so on and so forth, until, if you're really lucky, you stumble across a physician who says, oh, I'm familiar with this particular rare disease. I've done some research on it, and you look like you might have this rare condition. So with the use of de-identified health data, we're aiming to shortcut that process, which it can take 7 years of constant misdiagnoses for somebody with a rare condition to actually find out what's wrong with them and improve, finally, if there is a treatment, improve their quality of life, maybe save their life. So, we find that within health data, there's so much value. And I'm not talking economic value, I'm talking about human value. I'm talking about, reducing strain on the healthcare system and improving people's quality of life and making people not have to spend years upon years of being treated for things that they don't have, because there's no way for any one physician to know about all of these thousands of rare conditions that are out there, much less, some clinical trial that may be running for a rare disease. So when we talk about using de-identified health and claims data, this is our goal. We want to make people's lives better, and we can do that without sacrificing privacy, because again, personally identifiable information never comes to us. And then, we kind of empower, I hate that word, but we kind of empower our clients to be able to say, okay, I don't know who these 7,000 identifications are who have shown up in our ideal population, but here's a list of physicians who have patients who are in that list. So they can reach out to the physician and they can say, hey, you may not know about this rare condition. It may not fall under your specialty, but we think that you have a patient or two or three who fit the model that imply that they might have it. Now, we don't know who they are, but this is what the model looks like. This is what their health history should look like. You should talk to them, and in your opinion, based on the information that we're sharing with you about the condition, say, this might be really worth looking into.
And I think that's amazing, right? It's amazing to think that there are good ways to make sure that we have de-identified data that's being used in a responsible manner to actually help humanity. And I think that I like the idea of this privacy by design that you guys have implemented. Could you just talk a little bit more to that, and why you guys decided to go down that route?
Sure. So when you're looking at health claims data, you're under the purview of HIPAA, which is a kind of older but very powerful and very effective regulation in terms of people's health data. And a lot of times the way it works is if you want to manipulate, or if you want to run analytics on a health data set, you kind of have to get every step of the process. Every time you have an output, even if that output is kind of like in process, you have this output so that you can run another analysis on it. You technically have to have each output re-identified or recertified, not re-identified, never re-identified, but recertified by HIPAA. And so what we've done is we've built a process that follows HIPAA and allows the analysis and manipulation of this data all the way through to an end process. So say as a small biotech, you're running clinical trials for a rare disease, and because people have participated in the trials, you've kind of got this a baseline group of people who have this rare condition, something that could feed an AI system. What we can do is we can take our de-identified health claims data and build a model off of your internal database. And with us never seeing any personally identifiable information. And then the outcome is, we've given you the ability to find physicians with patients who are likely to fit this model based off of your clinical trial data. And it really all comes down to things like a lot of the clinical, or a lot of the rare diseases don't have numbers. So if you look into health claims data, you will have a particular code that corresponds with a condition. And a lot of rare conditions don't have those codes just because they're not widely enough known and widely enough recognized. But so effectively what we can do is, if there are codes, we can look at everybody who has that code, build kind of a model and extend that model over the entire population of de-identified individuals within the United States, and say, okay, well, we think that there might be several hundred people here, several hundred people there, yada, 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 and kind of expand the purview of allowing the biotech or allowing the pharmaceutical company to reach out to physicians with individuals who look to be to fit this model. But then our privacy by design allows us to maintain privacy. And I really wish I understood the tech side of it better. The patent is, publicly viewable if you want to look through it, but the privacy by design architecture gives us the confidence, gives our clients the confidence that everything that we are doing is above ground, or is above board. Everything that we are doing is designed from the ground up with privacy as a core consideration. It allows us to keep everything private. It also allows us to be faster and more accurate in terms of our AI modeling. Our machine learning specialists will talk about, if you're dealing with sensitive data, a lot of times you have to insert noise into the data to make it more impossible to back into something that might be considered PHI or PII. But because our system is built for privacy from the ground up, we don't have to do that. We don't have to intentionally introduce inaccuracy into the models in order for them to protect the privacy of the people who are being modeled. And then on the other side of things with Swoop, if we have a model of likely patients, we can build a demographic model that is just purely based off of demographics, and then allow people to run programmatic advertising to them. And we are the first and only consumer data oriented company to join the NAI. And I think, being a member of the NAI is hugely important to us, because, when you start getting into the online side of things, when you start getting into digital advertising side of things, you want to make sure that whoever is working with your data is working with them, not necessarily under threat, but voluntarily working with organizations that do have the option to not just set down a code of conduct, but have consequences if that code of conduct is not followed. So the NAI is the Network Advertising Initiative. They are an industry self-regulatory body, and they do have the power to, if somebody joins and does not follow their data privacy, their data best practices, they can refer them to the government for, punitive actions. We agree not just to follow the rules and the best practices of the NAI, but we agree under threat of, if we break our word, the government will come down on us. So it's interesting in a world where you've got government initiatives like CCPA and like HIPAA and everything that is coming down at the federal and state level that is punitive and that covers everybody. And you've also got the self-regulatory bodies that are trying to make sure that the industry is operating ethically, so that we don't have to have more, government oversight, because we can be trusted not to do stupid, unethical stuff with your data. And that's where I kind of like to balance to compare the NAI with that universal do not track flag. That was a great idea, but there's nothing behind it. It's just, hey, every browser now has this do not track flag that you can activate. Does anybody actually pay attention to it? Does anybody actually
Enforce it?
enforce it? Yeah, there's no
Not
enforcement.
really. There's not a lot
There's
of
this
a lot.
agreement that, yeah, there's just this agreement that, oh, it's a great idea, and I assume that everybody will follow it. But nobody followed it because,
There's no
you get into
enforcement.
a prisoner dilemma sort of situation where you're following it, but your opponents or your competitors are not following it, and they're wiping the floor with you because they're acting unethically, in a world where ethics is not protected by any sort of consequences. So organizations like the NAI, I think, are great because they provide consequences for members acting unethically. We're very proud to be members, and I think that not to toot our own horn a little too much, but it speaks to our dedication to privacy. We build our AI mechanisms from the ground up with privacy as a core goal. Achieving privacy is a core concern, and we join organizations that really provide for privacy protection among their members and enforce it.
Well, and I think that that's again another good thing to call out, and another good thing to really think about is that as companies and healthcare companies or any companies are looking at ways that they can not only be compliant with the law, but then also think about ways to be more ethical. The NAI is a great organization to consider. And then it also merits really realizing that there is a good balance here. There's a good balance between needing to use data to actually help humanity and being ethical still in the use of that. So just one more quick question for you before we sign off is that what do you think people should be doing for themselves? What do you think that individuals should be doing or considering when it comes to data privacy?
It's challenging because to a certain extent, you have to be at least a bit tech savvy to understand what's going on. And going back to the NAI, organizations like the NAI are trying to make it a lot more consumer friendly with, if you see an ad from an NAI member, you should be able to click through and see, what data was used to serve this ad to you. And then within that UX, you also have the option to opt out of that data being used. So, trying to streamline data privacy and data use best practices is a huge part of the industry. And then from the individual's perspective, you really just kind of want to know what's being shared. It's like anything in life. You want to be as informed as you possibly can. Understand that if you're using Chrome, that you're plugged into, if you're signed into Chrome, then you're plugged into Google, and your information is being shared with Google. And if you're signed into Facebook, then whenever you go to a site that has any sort of Facebook integration, which is pretty much any site at this point, that information is being logged by Facebook. And it's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing from an individual perspective, but if you don't know about it, it can surprise you. So, you know, anything that has your personally identifiable information, anything that knows your name or your location or your phone number or whatever that information happens to be, uh, just have in the back of your mind, well, where else do these organizations see me, and what can they connect to my personally identifiable information? You know, and Google has gotten in trouble lately, but I do believe that they are trying to balance privacy and what they're trying to do with data as well. It's a lot harder for them because they're so huge and because they're so ubiquitous and because, you know, it's very hard to take a Google to take somebody on the Google platform and decouple them from their identity. It's very hard. I don't know how to do it. I think they're really working very hard to do it. I don't want to badmouth Google. Um, but at the same time, I think consumers need to understand the reach of the online services that they use and the reach of the online services that they give their data to, and just kind of have in the back of their mind, you know, before I fill out this form, before I fill out this listicle, before I take action on something, where is my data going? And, you know, for an organization like us, we strive to be as transparent as possible. And I think most of the major organizations are working towards transparency. There's always bad actors. And, you know, I think the more success companies like Swoop have in terms of, you know, being both business, both economically successful and following privacy best practices, I think it can show the rest of just kind of the rest of the organizations out there that it is possible and that it is a better way to go. Um,
Good. And, you know, I know that from perspective that like that's really what we're looking for is good examples of this, good examples of companies that are achieving that balance. And I think that, you know, Swoop has definitely achieved that balance. So a couple of the articles that you see posted is Swoop's Privacy by Design, definitely worth reading. And then also just check out Swoop. This is, you know, it's a company that is doing this well. So Dan, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it. And you know, look forward to seeing what Swoop does in the future, and appreciate the steps that you guys have taken to be, you know, more ethical in your data collection and also with privacy by design.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you.